Yo, what's up guys? Welcome to another Magic the Gathering video. We're doing another Commander video this time. And today we delve into one of the most amazing combinations of colors in my opinion. It's red and blue. Izzet, of course. And it is a red and blue spell commander deck, so one of the annoying ones, I assure you. This deck basically evolves around putting out a certain enchantment called Omniscience. That's one of the main winning moves actually, and then just dumping your whole library onto the field. There's some other ways to actually win, but that's one of the most funny ways in my opinion. So let's go right into it and see how we can achieve such things. First of all, the general, it's Mystics of the Ismagus, which is one of the generals with experience counters. It's actually the one I like the most. So it's a 2/2 for 4, which is not a good deal, of course. He will get killed very easily. But his ability is quite good. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell with converted mana cost greater than the number of experience counters you have, you get an experience counter. And then your instant and sorcery spells cost 1 less mana for each experience counter you have. So he makes each spell cheaper, you know. So you start like with, if you put him out, start with a lightning bolt, then the next spell is 1 cheaper. Everything is 1 cheaper, and then you have to play something with 2 to get the next experience counter. Of course you can play something a lot more costly than this to get experience counters, but that's what he does. The thing is, he's like one way to achieve your victory, because he makes everything cheaper and it makes it a lot easier to throw out a ginormous amount of spells. But of course, because he's a creature, he's very vulnerable. But that's actually a good thing, because if you put this out, a lot of people will target it with removals, which will remove these cards from their hands. So you basically draw aggro with this thing, and then you achieve your victory the other way. I like to draw him out very early if I can, and then just to see what the opponents are doing. So he is a facilitator to victory, but by no means a necessary card. So yeah, with that said, let's look at the other 8 creatures we have in this deck. So yeah, I have almost no creatures in this deck. There's the Echo Mage. He comes into play as a 2/3 with no abilities, and he can level up. So this is of course, as in sorcery speed, you can pay 1 and a blue mana to give this creature a level counter, I think it's called. And as soon as he reaches level 2 and or 3, he gains an ability. You can pay 2 blue mana and tap to copy target instant or sorcery spell and choose a new target for it if you want to. And at level 4, you can copy instant and sorcery spells twice with this ability. Yeah, nasty. The thing is, of course, you have to pay the leveling cost, and it's only sorcery speed, so you cannot do it end of turn. But it's a very strong card, although the opponents will see it coming, so be prepared to have removal thrown at this guy very often. But of course, if you have nothing else to do and you need a mana sink, there you go. And the payoff is amazing, actually. Goblin Electromancer, very standard in blue-red spell stack, I think. It makes everything sorcery and instant spells less costly. It reduces the cost by 1. So he's like a cheap effect of the cheap version of the Mystics of Ismagus, and very limited of course, but it can be enough actually. Then this one, the next one is very interesting. It's Johira of the Gitu. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's a 2/2 for 3, and she has the ability to pay 2 and then exile a non-land card from your hand. Then you put 4 time counters on the exiled card, and if it doesn't have suspend, it gains suspend. So basically, if you have her in play, you can start to exile your own hand, and then these spells will come in at a certain time, and you don't have to pay the sometimes excessive mana cost. That's one of the ways to actually get Omniscience into play by turn 7 or something, without paying the mana cost, so you can build up your board and then get Omniscience. So she's very strong. Also, because you don't have to tap her for this ability, you can, if you have 5 mana, play her, and then if somebody removes her, just react to it and play something in the suspense. So that's very strong. Melek, Izzet of Paragon? Is it Paragon? Not of Paragon. You play with your top of your library revealed, and if it's an instant or sorcery spell, you can cast it. And if you cast an instant or sorcery spell from your top, you copy it. So that is a very, very good card in my opinion. It gives you one more hand card, and if it's an instant or sorcery, you can play it and double its effect, more or less. The next is the Melitist Charlatan. That's a politics card in my opinion. His ability says, 2 blue, tap, the controller of target instant and sorcery spell copies it. That player chooses a new target for the copy, or he may choose. So basically, you can do very interesting moves with this. You can copy your own spells, obviously, but you can also be very politician-like with this card. If somebody else is the strongest player, you can be like, okay, if you play a removal, I'll copy it with this guy and then you can remove a second thing. So you can be really interesting with this card, which I really, really like. The Mischievous Quanar? I'm not quite sure about this card, it feels kind of clunky to me, but it's interesting. It's a morph card basically. You can play it of course for 5 as a 3/3, but it doesn't do much then. If you unmorph it, you can copy an instant or sorcery spell, and then you can actually turn it face down again, so you can repeat that process. I'm not quite sure if you can morph it up and then in response actually turn it face down and morph it up again if you have enough mana. I'm not quite sure if that's possible, but if you have enough mana, that might be interesting. Next one is the Nivix Guildmage. For 3 you can loot, which is a nice little thing, but for 4 you can copy instants and sorcery spells. So you see where this is going, I think. Torrential Gearhulk, that's the biggest creature I have. It has flash, which is kinda nice, so you can wait with your mana until the last second to play him at the end of your opponent's step, basically. And if he enters the battlefield, you can cast an instant or sorcery from your graveyard, which can be really, really strong. Alright, next up, like the meat of this deck, the instants and sorceries. Let's start with the instances. First up we have Ether Snatch, which is a super interesting card because it allows you to steal opponent's creature as they play it. For example, if somebody plays a big nasty with an enter the battlefield effect, you can just snatch it, because why not? Also it works on cards that don't have targets. For example, if a card says you draw 2 cards, with Ether Snatch you can get this card and then you, the controller of Ether Snatch, draws 2 cards. So it's very interesting. Brainstorm, standard I think for blue decks today, I feel at least. Chandra's Outrage, that's just like a generic damage spell in here that I want to copy a lot. So this is actually a kind of mass removal for me if I copy it 2 or 3 times. So that's what that is. Counterflux, it's a counter spell that cannot be countered, and with Overload you can counter all other spells that are not yours. So if somebody is doing like crazy stack interactions, you can say enough is enough, I counter everything. Everything is void. The Desperate Ritual, that's one of the ways to get Omniscience out very early. I mean, if you have 3 blue mana and can copy this once or twice, you're game, basically. So that's an interesting thing. The Splice to Arcane, I think, doesn't really have a lot of possibilities in this deck, so there's a few arcanes, but yeah. Double Negative, again a counter spells, and you can counter up to 2 spells. So again, if somebody do some silly stacking thing, you can get rid of that. Electrolyze, 2 damage and draw a card. Very interesting if you copy it. Firemind's Foresight is actually a really good card. At first I was not a big fan of it, but the more I play it, the more I'm absolutely sure that this is one of the best cards in this deck. It gets you an instant for 3 mana, 1 for 2 mana, and 1 for 1 mana. So you can get things like Brainstorm, Electrolyze, Double Negative, I think also Counterflux, Desperate Ritual. You can get almost any instant spells, at least the important ones. So this is a very good card, and if you copy it even once, you get 6 spells out of the deal. That's card advantage, yo. Lightning Bolt, simple and effective, especially if you copy it. Magma Jet as well, the Scry too. If you can get multiple instances of that, you can rearrange your deck in a crazy kind of way. Opportunity, crazy. Copy it once and you have a huge card advantage. And with Omniscience, this is just amazing. Prophetic Bolt, it deals 4 damage to target creature or player, and you look at the top 4 cards. Put one of them into your hand and the rest at the bottom of the library in any order. This can be very good if you need like a specific card. You can start digging for it, especially if you copy it a few times. Then Pyretic Ritual, it's basically the same as the Desperate Ritual but without Splice to Arcane. Quicken, I really love this spell because there will be the time that I will quicken some ridiculous sorcery in somebody's end step and they will be like, what? And yeah, it draws you a card as well, so that's also like a little bonus on top. Redirect, I'm a fan of redirecting spells. I really am. So if somebody wants to be nasty to you, you say no. That's how you do it. Reigns of Power is very strong in this deck, basically against decks that use a lot of creatures or big creatures, because you basically swap creatures with another player for 1 turn. And if somebody has like a huge like token army, that's basically a win. Reverberate, copy target instant and sorcery spell, choose a new target. Yeah, you get the theme. Rewind, one of my favorite counter spells in EDH, because it basically is a zero-sum game. You pay for and then you untap 4 lands. Nice. And with things like Temple of the Fallen Gods and stuff like that, you can actually get ahead with that. So yeah. Scattershot is one of the win conditions in this game actually. If you can get enough spells out, you can scattershot people into oblivion. And Stream of Consciousness, not quite sure about this one. I might switch it out at one point. I put it in because it allows me to get 4 cards from my graveyard into my library, so if somebody like lets me mill my win conditions, I can get them back this way. Still, not big fan of it actually. Sudden Shock, because split seconds can fuck things up, especially combos. Telling Time, very good card in my opinion. It's cheap and you get a lot of like deck sorting with this card, so it's very good. Thunderous Wrath, nothing says fun like 5 damage for 1 mana, especially if you like copy it, then then it's even more ridiculous. And the Visions from Beyond, which in my opinion is a super strong card in EDH. You can draw 3 cards for 1 mana if you have 20 or more cards in your graveyard. With this deck, that's actually an easy thing to achieve. Then sorceries, we have Blast of Genius, which you choose a creature or a player, draw 3 cards, then discard a card, and Blast of Genius deals damage according to the converted mana cost of the discarded card. So I use this more for sorting purposes and getting cards into my hand than the damage, but sometimes it can be nice to remove something. Blatant Thievery, ridiculous blue spell, absolutely great in multiplayer. Empty the Warrants, one of the other win conditions, and one of the funny things you can do, like end step of somebody's turn with Quicken if he put out a lot of spells. So yeah, that's really fun. Epic Experiment is actually one of the other facilitators to get my win combos out. So the thing is, you exile the top X cards of your library for each instant and sorcery with converted mana cost X or less. You may cast a card without paying the mana cost, and put all cards exiled with the spell into your graveyard if they weren't cast. So if you have a lot of mana and you don't have Omniscience out, you don't have anything out to get you like the spells you need, then this is the way to actually try to get these spells out. So, and of course it's a funny random like spell generator for your storm count if you need it. So that's good. Flames of Firebrand is another like generic red damage spell. Geosurge is for getting huge cards out fast if I have to. Grape Shot, another win condition right here. And the next one, well, it's not the actual win condition, but it's your way to get to Grape Shot, to get to Omniscience and stuff. It's Mind's Desire. It's a storm spell. You shuffle your library, then exile the top card of your library until end of turn. You may play that card without paying its mana cost. That includes lands, I think? I'm not quite sure though, but it has Storm, of course. So if you can fire this off for like 4 or 5 already, this can mean big things for your deck. If you can get 4 or 5 spells out without doing anything, it can actually net you the win. Missile Mortars is one of the removals I have in this deck. Why is it a removal? It only deals 4 damage. Well, if you copy it even once, it's 8 damage, and most of the time I copy my spells twice, so that's 12. That hurts. Mystic's Mastery is absolutely insane. So just imagine you have gone through almost your whole deck, and you kill maybe 1 or 2 opponents, and you hit this. You kill the rest of the opponents as well. Also, it like gives you a crazy amount of storm counters, because it says you exile target card from instant. That's an instant or sorcery from your graveyard, and for each card exiled this way, copy it, and then cast the copy. You cast it. That's the big thing of this card. You actually cast the copy, which means it counts for storm, and it's amazing. Of course, you can overload it, so it says all instead of target, so you get to dump your whole graveyard onto the field again, get the storm counter up again, and just blast people. Just like that. Petals of Insight, which I just realized like a few days ago is actually an infinite combo. Hear me out. Okay, you look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may put those cards at the bottom of your library in any order. If you do, return Petal of Insight to its owner's hand. Otherwise, draw 3 cards. So why is this an infinite combo? Imagine this scenario. Omniscience, Petals of Insight, Scattershot. You know what that means? That means you can play Petals of Insight and always put the 3 cards on the bottom of your library. You get Petals of Insight back. You play it again, because Omniscience makes everything free to play for you. You do this 5 million times, and then you just Scattershot. That's something I just realized actually a few days ago. I never looked at it this way, but that's actually how it goes. So yes, nice. Also, this is one of the other arcane spells, so you can splice the Desperate Ritual onto this thing, which is cool because if you return it to hand afterwards, you can do it again. So that's kind of nice. Rite of Replication is one of the most broken spells, I think. And I had a lot of discussions with people about this spell, if we should ban it. Not if they should officially ban it, but if we should ban it in our play group. And I see why. It's absolutely crazy, and let's be fair, 9 mana in an EDH is not that much, to be fair. And the thing is, in my deck, this is one of the only ways I can protect myself against somebody who has big nasty creatures. I basically get more big nasty creatures than you. So it's as good as your deck is, because my creatures are actually not that good to replicate. Most of them are not that good if you have them 5 times. Of course, the most broken thing about this is I can, well, copy it like 3 or 4 times, which is ridiculous, but okay. Zero Vision's simple spell to get card advantage, especially if you copy it. It actually, like, is for every spell in this deck. If you copy it, it gets better. Stolen Goods, if your opponent happens to have a good card on top of his library and you know it, or if you generally think he has good cards that you need to get, play this, copy it, profit. Time Reversal is one of the most broken spells again in this deck because of something else I will show you later. It's kind of a reset. Each player shuffles his or her graveyard into his or her library and then draws 7 cards. So also this is kind of a reset of your whole deck. If you start to go through your deck and start to like fizzle out, a Time Reversal will refill your library and you can start up again. Time Warp is one of the only extra turns I play in this deck, and I'm thinking about taking it out because technically I don't need extra turns to win. It just makes the game longer, which I understand is not very fun for opponents. So I'm thinking about removing it because I never had a situation where I needed to say, okay, without these 17 extra turns I wouldn't have won. Yes, of course I would have, because I played my whole deck. The fact that I got 70 extra turns is just like a side note. So yeah, I might take it out. Yugen's Insight is amazing to go through your library and find the cards you need. You scry X, where X is the highest converted mana cost among permanents you control, and then you draw 3 cards. This is kind of cool. I have a lot of enchantments with big mana costs, so this is great. Washout is the only other removal I actually run. It returns all permanents of a color of my choice to its owner's hands. The cool thing is, if you copy it a few times, you can get actually the whole board wipe. And the only color I wouldn't choose is blue, because the most creatures I play are blue, like single color, and a few of them are dual colored, but I can basically return everything to somebody, to the owner's hand, if I just choose any other color than blue. So, alright, next up are artifacts. We have some interesting stuff here. Cold Steel Heart for mana fix and just mana in general. The Illusionist Bracers, it copies an ability of a... Well, if the equipped creature uses an ability, an activated ability that isn't a mana ability, you copy it. So your level 4 Echo Mage can now copy a spell 4 times. Yay! It's pretty over the top, but I like over the top things. Izzet Scepter, it has actually a lot of spells it can target. From a simple lightning bolt to a counterspell to a brainstorm. So there's a lot of interesting stuff. Or a reverberate to like copy spells every turn again and again. There's a lot of cool targets, and Izzet Scepter in itself is an amazing card. Pyromancer's Goggles is pretty amazing in this deck. So it allows me to spend 1 red mana. It generates 1 red mana rather. And if you spend it on a red instant or sorcery, you copy it. There's a lot of instant and sorceries I can use that on. Like Desperate Ritual. You can use it on Magma Jet. You can use it on one of the Chandras. I think Outrage. Not quite sure which one it is. There's a lot of spells I can copy with this thing, which is amazing. Seal of the Guild Pack. Great in this deck. It reduces all my spells by 2 because I play blue-red most of the time, and at worst it reduces all my spells by 1, the mana cost. Also, fun little fact, the artwork of this card actually it shows the 12 guild signets, and on the card the Izzet signet is actually illuminated, which I really like, so it fits thematically into this deck like a charm, so that's nice. Soul Ring, I actually recently got myself a few more Soul Rings, so I start to put these into my decks now, again, which is nice. Swiftfoot Boots to protect an important creature if I have them out. And Thought Vessel, because maximum hand size is for noobs. So, let's come to the broken things, the really important things of this deck, the enchantments. There's 5 of them. Some of them are a little less important. 3 of them are very important. Let's start with the 2 less important ones. There's Chase's Sanctum. It reduces the cost of instant and sorcery spells by 1, and whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you scry 1. Note, you need to cast it trigger the scry. So copies, unless it's from Mizzix Masteries, will not trigger the scry. So just remember that. Leyline of Anticipation, you can cast non-land cards as though they had flash, which is amazing in this deck. Omniscience at the end of somebody's turn, just before your next turn, is broken. Believe me, it's so nasty. And here is the fabled card. I think that's how you pronounce it, right? It's Omniscience. I used to say Omniscience. I'm not quite sure what it is. Omniscience or Omniscience? Anyway, it allows you to cast cards from your hand without paying their mana costs. Yeah. So if you have a card draw of some sort, a good enough card draw, you will rip the game apart. And there's actually some more enchantments to help me do that. For one of the newer cards in this deck, Swarm Intelligence. It's an enchantment that whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, lets you copy that spell. So it's a free copy for each spell you play, as long as this is on the battlefield, which is crazy. And then, of course, we have Thought Reflection. It's not cheap, just like Omniscience, it's not cheap. But if you have Omniscience and this on your hand, and one spell that draws you cards, let's say 90% of the time you win, if nobody can stop you. So this basically means you draw double the amount of cards. So let's just do some examples. A Brainstorm will draw you 6 cards, and of course you then put on top 4 of them again, but still it's 6 cards. If you copy the Brainstorm once, that's 12 cards. Or let's do the crazy thing. What was it called? The Time Reversal. You draw 14 cards off of that. It's absolutely amazing. Thought Reflection, if that hits and it sticks, you probably will win the game. At least with this deck. And yeah, that's basically what happens. If Thought Reflection and Omniscience are out and I start to draw cards, the game is over. Because I can then dump my whole deck onto the battlefield. It goes into my grave, Mizzix Masteries, I dump it all over the battlefield again, and then I fire off like a scatter shot for, I don't know, 80 or 90 damage. And then let's make 180 goblin tokens, and then another grape shot for 90 damage. It's just freaking crazy. And then with Time Reversal, of course, you can do the loop a few times. You can Time Reversal, put everything into your deck again from the graveyard, go through your deck again and again. And of course, I already mentioned Petals of Insight, which is an endless combo with Omniscience. So yeah, that's how it goes. Also, bonus, Petals of Insight, you can do an endless combo and then actually get the Scatter Shot and the Grape Shot, because you can draw 3 cards if you wish, so it's pretty crazy. Then the other one card that we have is one Planeswalker called Saheeli Rai. She has quite interesting abilities. She can, for +1, she can scry and deal 1 damage to each opponent, which is fine. I like scry. The -2 is where the interesting part comes in. Let me just open that in another tab because I need to read it. -2 is create a token that's a copy of target artifact or creature you control. Except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. That token gains haste. Exile it at the beginning of your next end step. You can do a lot of crazy stuff with it. Copy a guild pact, Seal of the Guild Pact, I think it's called. All your blue-red spells are 4 less mana to cost. Copy, I don't know, Pyromancer's Goggles to get a free red mana and a free copy of a red spell, a red instant or sorcery spell. You can do so many crazy things. You can copy, of course, like one of the Echo Mages. Of course, that will not have its level counter, so you're actually better off to copy the Charlatan, I think it's called, the one that copies the spell and the owner chooses the new target. So she's very good doing this. And her -7, if you should ever get there. is amazing. You search your library for up to 3 artifacts with 3 different names and then put them onto the battlefield, shuffle your library. In this deck, it's not that OP, but still, if you can dump like 3 artifacts just onto the field like that, even if it's just a Soul Ring, a Seal of the Guild Pact, and I don't know, a Cold Heart Star, that's a lot of mana you're just getting out of that. It can be worse, of course. You can put, I don't know, a Thought Vessel, maybe a Pyromancer's Goggles, and an Easycron Scepter onto the battlefield, just like that. So yeah, she has a lot of interesting stuff she can do. The lands, there's actually few special lands in this, so let me go over them real quick. The first one, that's more of a joke than an actual card I would play. Because I cannot imagine the situation where I would do this, but I have Magosi the Water Whale in this. What you can do is you can pay a blue mana and tap this thing and put an Eon counter on it, and then you skip your next turn. And then, of course, you can remove an Eon counter from Magosi the Water Whale and return it to its owner's hand, take an extra turn after this one. So you're basically like, I skip my turn now and I take one later, as long as this is not getting destroyed. Of course, the cool thing is you can tap it and then get an extra turn, so as long as you don't tap it for mana, you're good. Still, skipping a whole turn, even early game, well, actually, especially early game, can be quite fatal. There might be a few moments where this is actually interesting. If you would lose at the beginning of your turn, for example, then maybe that can save you? Maybe? So, yeah, it's more in this deck as a joke than an actual card, but yeah. Then Mikokoro, Center of the Sea. 2 and tap, each player draws a card. I think it's very cool, and it's kind of a political card. You can draw people cards. People like drawing cards, so yay. And there is Mirror Pool. Mirror Pool, of course, can copy instants and sorcery spells, and also can put tokens onto the battlefield that are copy of creatures you control. So, again, another way to copy stuff, this time as in form of a land. There's also Reliquary Tower, and the rest, I mean, well, Sand Silos is kind of interesting if you can store up enough counters. The rest is very standard, in my opinion. So yeah, this is the deck. You see, it's very ridiculous. It goes into overdrive if you have a certain card combination on the battlefield. Of course, that also means it's very easy to defeat, at least in my opinion. For example, there's a lot of black cards that extract cards from your deck and exile them. So you can, somebody plays that and maybe exiles Omniscience and a few of the other winning cards, Grape Shots, Mind's Desires, and then the deck is neutered. It still can win, but it's very hard to do so. Also, if somebody has like a really aggressive, fast deck, like maybe a Goblin EDH, something like that, then this deck will suffer hard. Of course, if you get to your combo mana, then, well, you might still win, but it's very hard to defend early on, especially if you have to throw out lightning bolts and stuff like that just to kill some small little creatures. You want to save these up for like a big, epic spell rotation. So yeah, I think that's how you defeat this deck. You have to pressure it early on, you have to pressure it hard, and maybe even go for land destruction. I'm not a fan of land destruction, but sometimes it actually is very appropriate, and I think this deck is one of the decks that needs to be controlled. I mean, I had situations where I could, from I think 4 or 5 mana, I could combo off. Because I, for example, copy Ritual of Desperation and then just Omniscience, bam, you're dead. That's how it goes. So you have to be very, very aware where this deck stands, how much cards do I have in my hands. Yeah, it's very hard to control it once it happens. Well, of course, counter spells at the right moment will stop the combo, obviously. There's also some split-second stuff, like I think it's Croson Grip, the split-second enchantment destroy card. that can royally fuck this deck up. Believe me. There is ways around this deck, obviously, but it's very volatile, let's put it that way. And that's how blue and red plays, right? Volatile and chaotic. So yeah, that's the deck, and I'll see you next time, which is like in 2 weeks for the next deck, which is gonna be green-white, if I am not mistaken. So yeah, until then, take care, and goodbye.